Good evening, YouTube. Welcome to Sit with Some Biblists. I am Shawn Evans, and we are in the kitchen tonight. Tonight, we are going to make homemade Alfredo sauce, pasta with shrimp. So, let me put all that together. Homemade shrimp linguine pasta. So, let me show you what I'm starting with. We are starting with the ingredients, and what we have here: spinach. You may also use baby spinach, but I'm using spinach. You will need Parmesan cheese, your pasta. I have linguine. You will need heavy cream. I'll tell you how much in a minute. Mushrooms, green onions or scallions, tomatoes, and of course raw shrimp. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just wanted to show you what ingredients I was going to be working with. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse everything off, dice everything up. Everything has to be diced very finely. The mushrooms can stay whole. We're going to dice the tomatoes, dice the onions, and also chop up the spinach. So stay tuned. I'm going to go ahead and put my pasta on so it can begin to boil. And stay tuned. This is a very, very easy dish to make. Very quick. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can also add chicken, or if you prefer sausage or something, you don't have to use shrimp, or you can add chicken and shrimp. So anyway, stay tuned, and I'm going to get started. See you in a bit. Okay, welcome back, YouTube. Now I have all of the vegetables and the ingredients diced and ready to start cooking. So let me show you the ingredients. They're all chopped and diced. With the spinach, you want 1 cup of spinach. So I removed the stems and I chopped up the spinach. With the green onions, this is 3 or 4 of the green onions. Cut off the ends and just dice them in small pieces. I use a whole container of the cherry or grape tomatoes. I'm not sure what you call them. And I'm going to use a whole container of mushrooms because I happen to love mushrooms. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we are going to do is, in a saucepan, we're going to go ahead and turn it on, a medium temperature. The first thing that we're going to put in is butter. And we're going to use about, let's see, 3 tablespoons. And I'm using Land O'Lakes. So we're going to let the butter melt, which is going to be the base and the foundation for the Alfredo sauce. So we're going to let the butter melt, and the next ingredient will be the green onions. The first thing is the butter, and then we'll put in the green onions. So I'm just going to let this melt. And you may use less butter. I mean, it's up to you. It's not required. Kind of do what works for you or your diet or your health. And the green onions, they smell so fresh and so good. It's making me hungry just smelling them. I'm just spreading the butter around the entire pan, the saucepan. I'm going to go ahead and put in the green onions and let those saute. The next thing that we put in with the green onions are the mushrooms. So we let the mushrooms and the green onions just saute and simmer down, and both of them are going to caramelize and form a nice texture, flavor, and smell for the base of our sauce. So we will let this simmer on a medium to high temperature, not high, but medium to high temperature for maybe 10 minutes or so. So while that's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and peel and clean my shrimp. and then I'll be right back so we can add the next ingredients to the Alfredo sauce. So stay tuned. Welcome back, YouTube. The onions and the mushrooms are doing great. They are caramelized and they are sauteing very, very good. Let me let you take a peek at the onions and the mushrooms and the butter, and then we will move on to the next ingredient. So this is the simmering of the onions and the mushrooms. It smells really, really good, and it's going to draw down and get smaller and smaller and smaller as it sautés. So at this point, it's ready to add the next ingredient. And our next ingredient is going to be the diced tomatoes. So we take the tomatoes and go ahead and add those. Now, if you are not a fan of tomatoes, you may use less tomatoes. I happen to like tomatoes, so of course I have more. Tomatoes are going to create some liquid, so there will be a little bit more juice, so you want to give those a little bit more time to cook if you want it more thick and less liquidy. It's not going to create an enormous amount of liquid, but it will create some liquid from the tomatoes. So it looks really colorful and really hearty with the tomatoes, the green onions, and the mushrooms. So we're going to let this simmer for another 5 to 10 minutes so that the flavors can really mesh and combine and just really, really get tasty. So I'll let you have a peek at this so you'll know what it should look like before we move on to the next step. So in here we have the green onions, diced very finely, fresh mushrooms, and fresh tomatoes. And it's sauteing on a medium temperature with the butter. So I'm going to just let this simmer for another 5 to 10 minutes, and then I will be back and we will add the next ingredients. See you then. Welcome back, YouTube. We are here with the green onions, the mushrooms, and the tomatoes, and I'm just going to remove it from the heat for just 1 second so that you can see what it looks like at this point. Okay, this is the tomatoes, the mushrooms, the green onions, and the butter, and it's sauteed down just the way that it should be, and at this point it smells really, really good. So at this point we're going to go ahead and move forward and add the next ingredient. I'm just going to turn the temperature down just a little bit. The next ingredient is going to be the heavy cream, or half and half. It's up to you. I'm using heavy cream. Shake, 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 shake. And the recipe calls for, I think, a cup. But I'm going to start with a half of a cup and mix that in and see how creamy and rich that is, and then add more as needed. So add the heavy cream. Let me just mix this up. It just depends on how thick or how creamy or loose you would like it. I actually like the consistency of a half a cup. This recipe also calls for a fourth of a cup of white wine, but I don't have any white wine, so I'm just going to use a little bit of lemon juice, but you can use both lemon juice and white wine for this recipe, in addition to everything that you've seen so far. So that's the heavy cream. And now the last thing we add is the spinach, because it doesn't take any time to cook. It cooks really fast. So we'll go ahead and add our spinach and our Parmesan cheese, and we will have our creamy Alfredo sauce. Spinach. And it looks like a lot of spinach, but as it cooks, it's just going to draw down and get smaller. So the spinach has been added. And the colors are amazing. The red tomatoes, the spinach, the mushrooms, the green onions. Oh, I love making this. Okay, and I'm just mixing everything together. And the final step would be to add the Parmesan cheese. And I'm using shredded Parmesan cheese, and the recipe calls for maybe a cup of this, but I am going to I may use this entire bag. And I just like to sprinkle and stir. Just sprinkle and stir. Hello YouTube, we are back. I was having some technical difficulties, but we are back, and we have the green onions, the mushrooms, tomatoes, the spinach, heavy cream, and shredded Parmesan cheese for our Alfredo sauce. And it's very creamy, it's rich, and all of the ingredients are in there, and I'll let you see. You have to continue to stir it to ensure the cheese doesn't get stuck to the spinach and form little clumps. So let me show you a peek of the Alfredo sauce. It's creamy, it's rich. I don't know if you can see all the ingredients. The spinach, the mushrooms, the tomatoes. It's very, very creamy. The next step is going to be to saute the shrimp, which are right here. I'm going to go ahead and saute the shrimp and then put everything together and plate it. So just stay tuned. Go ahead and melt my butter for my shrimp. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is simply saute the shrimp and continue to stir the sauce to make sure the cheese doesn't get too thick and creamy, and then I'll put everything together. The shrimp, I've already seasoned them, so I'm going to go ahead and put them in